Hello, once again, Kenny Jacobs from Bloomington, Illinois. I'm going to do another video this evening talking about current events as it relates to Bible prophecy. And, well, again, there's an awful lot going on. So I want to go ahead and touch on quite a few news stories tonight. And a lot of times I like to start with a quick scriptural reference that most of these stories will tie into. So I'm going to start again in Matthew chapter 24, verse 3. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming, and of the end of the world? And Jesus answered and said unto them, Take heed that no man deceive you. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in divers places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Well, we are definitely in the beginning of sorrows, and in fact, I think we're about at the end of the beginning of sorrows, and just about ready to start the final 7-year period of time. But if you're watching any of my videos, you know that final 7-year period of time will start when the Antichrist confirms a covenant with many. And recently, Israel's come out and said that they would like a ceasefire agreement of 5 to 7 years. I'm not saying that ceasefire agreement will be that covenant, but we can see the world moving in that direction, and it looks like it's just a matter of time before that covenant will be confirmed. Let's run through some quick news stories. Just saw this a few minutes ago on Fox News that there were 80 people killed today in 4 separate suicide bombings outside of mosques in Iraq. So, distress of nations, Luke 21. Iraq is kind of in an uproar right now because their government's kind of collapsing, and there's a new leader, and of course ISIS is wreaking havoc in Iraq as well. So, the country of Iraq is certainly in distress. America is non-stop in distress. Obviously, Gaza and Israel are in distress. Syria is in distress. The Ukraine is in distress. North Korea, South Korea. It's crazy all around the world. But suicide bombers, again, the Muslims, the so-called Islam, religion of peace, not bringing much peace around the world at the moment. One of the things I just read in Matthew 24, besides wars and rumors of wars, was that there would be earthquakes in diverse places. And just look real quickly at the earthquakes. In just the last 2 days, and all I'm counting now are 4.0 and higher earthquakes around the world. In the last 2 days, there have been 43 earthquakes of 4.0 or higher. 8 of those are 5.0 or higher, and one of them was 6.4. And I've lost count of how many earthquakes there have been on the Iran-Iraq border in the past week, but I'm going to tell you it's probably, and these are, some of these are 2, 3.0, but there's a lot of those that are 4.0, 5.0, and higher. Quite a few of them have been big earthquakes. Some of them have caused damage. But I'm going to tell you it's probably close to 200 earthquakes in the last week on the border of Iran and Iraq. But we're definitely seeing earthquakes in diverse places. So let's get into some more actual news stories. I'm going to cover quite a few of them today. Let's see, the first one, this is out of the Times of Israel. Egypt urges open-ended truce and new ceasefire talks. Netanyahu tells UN chief that Hamas shares IS methods, ideology. Cairo call follows meeting between Abbas and Sisi. That's the headline. Egypt on Saturday called for an open-ended truce in the Gaza Strip, urging the Palestinians and Israel to return to indirect talks. The call from the Foreign Ministry came shortly after Western-backed Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas met with Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi in Cairo. Israel government spokesman Mark Regev had no immediate comment on the Egyptian call. Also Saturday, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke to UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon about the ongoing operation in Gaza and told him that Hamas is committing war crimes and using civilians as human shields. But it's just amazing how the world doesn't want to seem to listen to Benjamin Netanyahu or Israel. In fact, the UN wants to, basically they want to prosecute Israel for war crimes. It's just crazy what's going on with the UN and Israel. Let's go on. The world saw yesterday when Hamas killed 18 suspected collaborators with Israel that Hamas, like the Islamic State, carries out mass public executions. In addition, Hamas, like the Islamic State, it persecutes and oppresses minorities, Netanyahu said. The ideology of these two groups calls for Islamic caliphates, and both use the same murderous methods. Hamas is the Islamic State. The Islamic State is Hamas, he added. A temporary Israel-Hamas truce collapsed on Tuesday when Hamas breached the quiet and restarted rocket fire on Israel, bringing the Egyptian brokered talks to a halt. More than 2,000 Palestinians have been killed since the Gaza war began on July 8th. Israel says 750 to 1,000 of the dead are Hamas and other gunmen, and blames Hamas for all Gaza's civilian casualties. Since Hamas set up its rocket launchers, tunnel openings, and other elements of its war machine in Gaza neighborhoods and uses Gazans as human shields. Unfortunately, a 4-year-old Israeli boy named Daniel Tragerman was killed by mortar fire from Hamas on Friday. But here's what the IDF does, and this is what this says at the bottom of this article. It says the IDF dropped pamphlets in Gaza warning that it would act with full force against any military or civilian civilian installation from which terrorist activity is directed at the State of Israel. Any house from which military action originates will be attacked and hit. For your own safety, prevent terror operatives from using your property for terrorist purposes and stay away from any place used by terror operatives. So that's what they've been doing. They've been trying to warn the citizens of Gaza to flee and take cover. Israel's doing everything they can not to injure civilians. Let's go on to another article. This one just popped up while I was reading that one. U.S. may take action against Islamic State in Syria. And again, I just read about wars and rumors of wars in Matthew chapter 24. If you come after Americans, we're going to come after you, White House warns. The White House said it was ready to take action against any threat to America, as it indicated serious consideration of U.S. military strikes against Islamic State militants in Syria. Deputy National Security Advisor Ben Rhodes said late Friday that any strategy to deal with the ISIL organization has to deal with both sides of the border, Iraq and Syria. And I saw him interviewed on Fox News a little earlier tonight. He was again saying that we do need to go into this and attack Syria, but he said that we need to warn the American people that this is probably going to take years. That ISIS is well financed, very well prepared, very strong, and very well trained, and won't back down, and that this will take years to accomplish. Let's see here. It says the Pentagon has warned of the dangers of the IS and said operatives against it in Syria may be needed after weeks of airstrikes have slowed the advance of the Sunni militant group in Iraq as the West reeled from the grisly killing of American journalist James Foley. The U.S. military official also told the Wall Street Journal that strikes as so-called high-value targets, such as individual leaders, could be mounted within an hour, it could be a week. Syria's civil war, which has been raging for more than 3 years, has thrown the region into turmoil and so far has killed more than 170,000 people. In fact, I saw Another article is saying it's up to 191,000 people right now, and it's really amazing to me how the world is all up in arms because Israel has killed about 1,000 Gazans, yet almost 200,000 people have died in the last few years in Syria, and no one really seems to talk about it. It just shows you how the world focuses on Israel, and that's because the Jewish people are God's chosen people. God gave the land of Israel to the Jewish people. He returned them to that land in the last days, said he would, and has. And he said he's going to fight for and protect them. And he's made it clear that all the world will come up against Israel and will burden itself with Jerusalem in the last days. And that's exactly what we see happening right now. Let's go on to another story. Well, this one I'm not going to read. I just referenced it from another story. But Hamas has now killed 22 suspected collaborators, people that they say may be collaborating with Israel during this battle that's going on right now. I'm quite certain that those people didn't collaborate with Israel in all likelihood, but Hamas is certainly going to murder quite a few people just to intimidate the people and try to make sure that they stay in line and follow Hamas. And so they're using that as an intimidation factor. Let's go on. Let's go to the Eretz Sheva today. There's another couple articles out of there. Let me just read some of the headlines. Then there's a couple articles that I want to address. Pro-Palestinians defend Hitler in London. That's one headline. Defense minister in Israel is weighing a ground incursion into Gaza. Let's go down here and look at some other headlines. This is about the Jewish world. And again, the world hates the Jew, and it's happening. You can see anti-Semitism rising all around the world. Here we see some Jewish news that says, well-known Turkish-Jewish couple murdered. In Denmark, a school is targeted in anti-Semitic attack. Muslim protesters attempt to storm a Swiss synagogue. And a Swedish woman was beaten for wearing a Star of David. And again, we see in Matthew, it says in the last days, the love of many will grow cold. Timothy talks about perilous times in the last days. Here we see a woman getting beaten just because she was wearing a Star of David. Anti-Semitism is on the rise all around the world. There's anti-Israel protests all around the world. In fact, I believe it was Friday, there was a Palestinian flag, Gaza flag, or Hamas flag, on the Manhattan Bridge in New York. Let's continue on. Abbas Mashal call on UN to end the occupation. PA and Hamas leaders urged the United Nations to draw up a timetable for the Israeli occupation to end. I can assure you that when that finally happens, it will not be a good day for the Palestinian people. The world will suffer incredible judgment from God when they divide the land of Israel. Here we go. Let's read the article. Palestinian Authority Chairman Mahmoud Abbas and Hamas exiled leader Khalid Mashal on Friday urged the UN nations to draw up a timetable for the Israeli occupation of Palestinian territories to end. The two made the appeal during talks in Doha as fighting continues in the Hamas-ruled Gaza Strip. The two leaders have been holding talks in Doha since Thursday, but little else has filtered out of their meetings, which are hosted by the Emir of Qatar, a key backer of Hamas. Talks broke down with Israel, insistent on its demand for security from Gaza rocket fire. That's an unreasonable request on Israel's part, isn't it? We want security from Hamas rocket fire as part of a ceasefire deal. Wow, what an unreasonable request. Alright. I've lost my place. Hold on a minute. Sorry about that. And Hamas, defiant on its call for an end to 8 years of the Israeli blockade. Abbas and Mashal discussed Israel's aggression on Gaza and underlined the importance of acting at all levels in order to lift Israel's blockade of Gaza. They also agreed to request from the United Nations a resolution that would define a timetable for the end of Israel's occupation and the establishment of an independent Palestinian state. The agency said Abbas would undertake the diplomatic steps necessary to seek such a resolution. Hamas, which drove Abbas loyalists out of Gaza in a bloody coup in 2007, joined a national unity agreement government with Abbas's Fatah faction in June, causing Israel to pull out of the peace talks with the Palestinian Authority. And that just happened in June, and Hamas has already tried another coup against Fatah, against the Palestinians already. This week, it was cleared for publication that the Hamas headquarters in Turkey ordered a large-scale coup of Abbas's new PA government by destabilizing the political and security situation through a series of terror attacks on the Israelis. Abbas later said the information could have lasting implications for the Palestinian Arab people. The unity government itself has been slowly crumbling over the past 2 months after differences of opinion have surfaced over several issues, including the war in Gaza. They can't even get along with each other. How are we going to get peace with Israel? Nevertheless, during their meeting, Abbas and Mashal stressed that the unity government represents all the Palestinian people and looks after their interests. Also reported that the Qatari ruler spoke by phone Friday to UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon to discuss efforts to stop Israel's aggression on Gaza and lifting of the blockade. And of course, UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon is about as anti-Israel as you can get. So again, I'm sure at some point Israel will be forced into an agreement that they do not want and that will not lead to peace. The Egyptians seem to be failing in the peace talks. Obama and John Kerry failed in the peace talks. But there will be somebody coming along here shortly who will get his power and authority from Satan himself, who will seem to have all the answers, and he will pull off this peace agreement. But again, it will not bring peace. Let's look at another article out of the Yoret Sheva today. Again, it has to do with dividing the land of Israel. A new UN resolution sets talks based on the 1949 lines. European proposal, which again, the European Union is part of the revived Roman Empire, and the Antichrist should come out of there. He will be the one to confirm the covenant with many to start the final 7-year period of time. But here we go. European Union. This is European proposal would take the PA, would have PA take control of Gaza and pushes Israeli back to talks with predefined borders. A new UN Security Council resolution proposed by Germany, Britain, and France calling for an end to violence in Gaza contains some significant caveats that are reportedly garnering opposition from Israel. A senior European diplomat on Thursday said that the resolution proposals included the removal of the blockade on Gaza, transferring control of the Hamas stronghold to the Palestinian Authority, and a return to peace talks based on the 1949 armistice lines. The specific imposition of predefined conditions in peace talks through a UN resolution, namely that they'd be on the basis of the 1949 lines, is something that the U.S. has been opposing for years. On the other hand, the U.S. proposed the 1949 lines as a basis in framework proposals submitted earlier in the year, before the 9-month-long negotiations with the PA failed in April because of PA signing the unity treaty with Hamas. It goes on. I'm going to scroll down here and go a little farther, and it says, Europe can't separate Gaza in peace talks. According to the European diplomat The European proposal would have both sides stop attacking and define detailed security arrangements for removing the blockade while preventing an influx of weapons to Hamas. As far as Europe is concerned, it's impossible to separate the issue of Gaza from the general Palestinian issue. Only a sustainable diplomatic solution will bring along quiet for the two peoples. He added that France put pressure on the U.S. through diplomatic channels to publish U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry's framework plan after the Israeli-PA negotiations collapsed, so as to turn it into a program for the international community to pursue. It says an Israeli diplomatic source has not ruled out renewed ceasefire talks in Cairo, but expects Hamas to completely end its rocket barrage first, which it just doesn't look like Hamas has any plans to stop firing rockets at Israel. Let's go to one other situation I want to talk about. We're back to a pestilence. Again, Matthew 24. I read a little bit about pestilence in the last days. I'm going to read a couple different articles here. The World Health Organization, this is in USA Today, underestimated the Ebola outbreak spreads. Ebola continues to spread in West Africa as Sierra Leone voted to pass a new amendment imposing jail time for anyone caught hiding an Ebola patient. With 142 new cases recorded, the total number now is 2,615 with 1,427 deaths. The World Health Organization said Friday. The group added that the magnitude of the Ebola outbreak has been underestimated. Many families hide infected loved ones in their home, the organization wrote in an assessment. Others deny that a patient has Ebola and believe that care in an isolation ward, viewed as an incubator of the disease, will lead to infection and certain death. Most fear the stigma and social rejection that come to patients and families when a diagnosis of Ebola is confirmed. One center with 20 beds opened its doors to 70 possibly infected people, likely coming from shadow zones where people fearing authorities won't let doctors enter, the UN Health Agency said. The phenomenon strongly suggests the existence of an invisible caseload of patients who are not being detected by the surveillance system. This has never been seen in an Ebola outbreak. The country's new law, enacted to compel residents to cooperate with the government officials, was passed on Friday and imposes prison terms up to 2 years for violators, again, for people who hide Ebola patients. So then it says, meanwhile, 2 new cases emerged in Nigeria, where patients were quarantined 2 days ago while being tested. Authorities are now trying to identify and monitor everyone they have been in contact with. In all, 213 people are now under surveillance in Nigeria. So we can see that that is spreading. And now, there's something else weird going on in the Congo. 70 die in Congo from a virus. And the World Health Organization is denying that it's Ebola, but it's another hemorrhagic fever virus that has been killing people in the Congo. 70 people die from an illness, and let's just touch on this real quick. They're calling it hemorrhagic gastroenteritis, denying that it's Ebola. This is not Ebola, said an email to Reuters on Thursday. A local priest, though, who asked not to be named, said that the illness had affected several villages and estimated that the death toll was over 100 people. And it's another similar disease causing hemorrhaging, vomiting, high fever. But if this is not Ebola, then it looks like there's another similar virus spreading now. The outbreak began in the remote jungle province of Equator, where the first case of Ebola was reported in 1976, prompting speculation that it was the same illness that had killed More than 1,350 people in an outbreak now raging in West Africa. Symptoms of the two diseases are similar. They include vomiting, diarrhea, and internal bleeding. But the fatality rate of this outbreak of the hemorrhagic gastroenteritis is much lower than the West Africa Ebola outbreak at around 12% versus close to 60%. We're going to keep seeing more and more of this, guys. It's one of the end time prophecies, one of the end time pestilences that's going to be spreading around the world. I mean, I wish I could bring better news. The world is a crazy place right now, and it's just going to get crazier. And if you think it's bad now, wait until the final 7-year period of time actually begins. We ain't seen nothing yet, so to speak. But it is time to absolutely make sure 100% you are saved. You have given your life to Jesus Christ and accepted the forgiveness that comes through Him and Him only. He is the only source of salvation. All other religions, all other gods, all other paths are false. There is one way and one way only to God, and that is through Jesus Christ. He Himself said in John 14:6, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh to the Father but by me. But I want to leave you with this one last scripture here, because this is a very, very scary what's going on around the world, and people who are ignoring the signs and scoffing. And there's so many people caught up in the New Age movement or just thinking that there's many paths to God. Universalism, we all believe in the same God. We're all going to the same place. God is love. God wouldn't judge. And no one's going to hell. We're all going to be saved. And that is just absolutely not the truth. And there are a lot of people who even think they're Christians and they think they know Jesus Christ. But I want to read a very scary passage of Scripture. If you think you aren't for sure that you are saved, you need to pay close attention to this. This is Matthew chapter 7, verse 21. Not everyone that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name, and in thy name have cast out devils, and in thy name done many wonderful works? Then I will profess unto them, I never knew you. Depart from me, ye that work iniquity. Therefore, whosoever heareth these sayings of mine and doeth them, I will liken him unto a wise man which built his house upon a rock. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat upon that house, and it fell not, for it was founded upon a rock. And every one that heareth these sayings of mine, and doeth them not, shall be likened unto a foolish man, which built his house upon the sand. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew, and beat upon that house. And it fell, and great was the fall of it. It says right here, by the way, that Jesus Christ is the rock, not the Pope. Peter, the whole Pope thing, and the rock. The rock of our salvation and the rock that we are to build our faith on is Jesus Christ and Jesus Christ alone. Your church will not save you. Your sacraments will not save you. Your good works will not save you. Only belief in Jesus Christ and His salvation, His death on the cross and resurrection, repenting of your sins and accepting the forgiveness that He gave you, is the only source of salvation. And all the signs that Jesus told us to be looking for prior to His return are absolutely taking place every single day, all around the world. So what does that mean? It means it's time to make sure you're ready. And keep looking up. God bless everyone.